Hey, and welcome to The Solid Verbal. Now would be a perfect time to consider subscribing. Yeah, that little subscribe button for year-round premium college football content. That's it. Here's the video. Enjoy. Subscribe. Let's talk with you about Georgia football. How about we start
Georgia football, yeah. 14-1 overall last season, 8-0 in conference. They won the national championship, so that's cool. First time in, 41 years. The defense was historically good. The offense was very physical, led by a former walk-on in Stetson Bennett. It was a great story. And so as everything goes in this world, you do something good. The question then immediately shifts to, well, can you do it again? Can you do it again? That's the way it works in sports. So for Georgia, it's an interesting question to ask because we can't even get there without first talking about the turnover from last season. There were a record 15 guys picked in the NFL draft, 5 defenders picked in the first round, 7 defenders picked in the first 3 rounds. Their defensive coordinator also gone, coaching at your alma mater, Oregon.
Yep, Dan Lanning. Yep.
And, when you look at that turnover, I granted, there is so much talent still in Athens. They're going to be very good. They're going to win the East. Of course, they're going to win the East. I've just seen too many previews that are penciling Georgia into the playoff. Sight unseen. I get it. I get it. I totally understand it. I think that's a very logical pick. They are loaded, but that's a lot, right? I come back to what I said a couple episodes ago. That's a lot to replace. That's a lot. Their returning production on the defensive side is 122nd in the nation. That's a lot. So they got their work cut out for them on the defensive side of the ball. But here's where context is important. And here's where that returning production number can lie to you. Georgia rotates guys in and out, almost more so than most other programs in college football. So yes, a ton of talent's gone, but they're not starting over. It's not even close to that. Georgia had 26 guys on this defense with at least 10 tackles last season. And again, they're loaded at all 3 levels of the defense. You have to expect, I think, a tiny step back. There has to be, right? There just has to be a tiny step back. But even if it's a tiny step back, they were so historically good last season that they're going to be incredible on defense. So, get to know some of the names on this defense if you want. Jalen Carter, good up front. Nolan Smith in that linebacking core. Keely Ringo, right? If you know those guys, you kind of have it down pat with respect to the nucleus of this defense. Jalen Carter, for what it's worth, might be the best defensive lineman they've had yet. I mean, people are really high on him. He's super talented. God.
Ty, you're falling into the trap of...
I know.
Yes.
I know.
Yeah,
I'm doing
it was like, Bo Jackson was good, but wait until this next guy.
I know.
You're just seduced by the novel.
I've been reading too many of these previews, man.
I know. Dude, it's the problem is, if we can digress for a moment, a lot of the previews involve very good writers calling up coaches who say things like, yes, last year's whatever was good, but this year's might be even more athletic. This year's secondary might be the most talented I've ever had. Yeah, that's the problem, is previews are written in the spring and summer. And so there's that just the seductive nature of, sure, the sun is bright, but have you seen this new star? Yeah.
You read too many of these previews, it eats away at your brain. Before you know it, you're too sunny and optimistic about everything.
Yeah.
But
I'm always optimistic about Phil Steele's PLZs or his WFTs or his R14s. Yeah, always gets me.
Jalen Carter's good. Yeah. Nolan Smith is good. Keely Ringo's going to be a first-round pick. He had the pick 6 in the championship. These are all good guys, and because of that rotation that Georgia has, they're not starting. I don't care what returning production says. Georgia's going to be loaded again on defense. Just get used to it. At worst, they will be very, 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 very good, like top 5. Okay?
And it's Will Muschamp and Glenn Schumann, right?
That's correct.
They were locked in last year as well.
That's correct. I am more interested in the offense.
Yeah.
I am more interested in the offense. I think the passing attack is going to grow and become a little bit more multi-pronged. Brock Bowers is the all-world tight end. If you don't know his name, you should already know his name. But if you don't, get used to it. He's one of like 4 tight ends that Georgia will base its entire offense around. He's a matchup nightmare. He's huge. He led the team in targets last season as a freshman. You combine them with a wide receiver room that is still loaded, despite the fact that George Pickens and Jermaine Burton are gone. We're talking about the likes of Ladd McConkey. We're talking about Adonai Mitchell. You combine those guys with Brock Bowers. This is really a good young nucleus for a receiving core. The line's solid. The backs are good. Stetson Bennett's going to have weapons to throw to. I think they'll be, again, very, very good on offense. I'm just interested more from the standpoint of I think there is potential for that offense to evolve further. And if they can truly build, they're very good in the passing game from an efficiency standpoint, but if they can just take that one notch higher, a little bit more explosive, they're unbeatable again. They're unbeatable.
How much? Yeah, here's I think what the question is going to be is if the defense is merely very, very good, how much more weight will the offense need to pull along the way to run the table once again until the SEC championship game, whatever? Like how if the offense just needed to provide 20% of the lift last year, 15, 31, whatever that percentage is, it seems to me from the outside, because you looked into this deeper, that the sort of missing link to all of this is, as you mentioned, the explosion. And it's just like, what is, like maybe the intermediate passing game? What does Stetson Bennett look like over a linebacker in front of a safety, hitting somebody up the seam? Because he connected deep pretty well. He hit McConkey in some key places. He hit, I want to say was it James Cook who would line up split wide? They had that play that worked against a couple of different teams these past couple of years. But who is it that, is able to get open and Stetson Bennett finds to just sort of keep everybody honest everywhere if they need to bring, if they need to pull more of the weight for Georgia football?
Yeah, to answer your question, there's a couple different ways you could approach that, but I do think the teams around Georgia in the SEC East, Tennessee, Florida, certainly Tennessee and Florida to some extent, Kentucky, I think those teams around Georgia are better. And so they will be tested a little bit more on offense by teams on their own side of the SEC.
Sure.
Both on offense and defense. So I think there will be a little bit more strain on the offense, but the thing is, even if the defense takes a marginal step back, they were just so good last year. Georgia was killing teams last season. If they give up an extra touchdown compared to last season, they can continue at that same level of production on offense and be perfectly fine and skate by. So I don't know. It's hard for me to gauge truly how much difference there will be or how much difference there will need to be in order for Georgia to get back to where they were last season. I think what the most important point is that all the pieces are in place. They have what they need. I am a little skeptical that Stetson Bennett can do it again.
Okay.
But that's probably more of a me problem than it is a Stetson Bennett problem. I was not sold on him last year, nor the year before, and he got the job done when he had to last season. So if he can replicate that, great. Georgia's got what they need. The schedule's very favorable. Neutral site, home game in Atlanta on week 1 against your Oregon Ducks, followed by 6 very winnable games. The schedule's a little bit backloaded. There's an interesting stretch of Florida, Tennessee, and then road games against Mississippi State and Kentucky. And those games will be of great interest to us once we get there. But I've got Georgia out of the East. I'm not necessarily confident they're going unbeaten.
Right.
In the regular season like they did last year. But am I saying Georgia's the faulty oxygen tank on this rocket that's going to derail the hopes and dreams of the other hopeful shipmates of getting to the moon? Yes, I am. That is Georgia.
Is there a chance, albeit small, maybe you can give me this percentage, I don't know, that as I look at their schedule, I'm seeing Auburn and then Vandy before the bye, before the Florida game. Is there a chance that if Stetson Bennett, who Georgia fans are like, look, we love him, but there's some guys behind him for the future. Is there a chance that if he has a hangover from last year and the offense just isn't clicking in the way it probably should given his experience and the talent around him, do you think there's a chance that if he doesn't look the part, Vandy game, South Carolina game, Auburn game, whenever, early on, that there could be rumblings? Maybe just fans online, whatever, be like, let's see what we have in Brock Vandagriff. Let's see what we have in Carson Beck, Gunnar Stockton, whoever. Do you think there's an actual chance of that, or do you think he's unimpeachable?
I think he's unimpeachable.
Position? Okay.
And I don't necessarily agree with it because I do think some of the guys behind him probably have more upside. We may see some of those guys get cycled in because, again, as you said, through the first 7 weeks of the schedule, maybe outside of that Oregon game, these are very winnable games.
Yeah.
These are very winnable games where Georgia should have no trouble running over their opponent. So we may get a chance to see what some of those other guys can do. It just may not be in a high leverage situation.
Oregon's defense, by the way, I think Georgia's in a better place than Oregon overall, to be clear.
Sure.
I think Oregon's defense might be able to make some noise in that game. I think they're deeper than I even thought. And with Dan Lanning's knowledge of the current Georgia team, now obviously things are going to change in this offseason, of course. I don't know. I still like Georgia in that game, but I think they can throw a bunch at Georgia. I really do.
I'm in on Georgia. I'm in on Georgia coming out of the East, if only by default. I think the other teams here that are vying for that crown are not nearly as far along. They're not as talented. All I'm saying here is I don't think Georgia will be quite as dominant as they were last year, but even still, that's a really good place to be.
Can you rank for me the loss likelihoods in that late October, November stretch? Florida, Tennessee, and then, Florida neutral, Tennessee in Athens, and then in Starkville and in Lexington. Rank for me the likeliest to least likely losses in that clearly brutal stretch, just in terms of relative to the schedule overall.
In terms of the SEC East, I would probably rank it Tennessee 1, Florida 2, Kentucky 3. In that order.
Tennessee 1 in Athens, Florida 2 neutral, and then Kentucky 3?
Kentucky 3, yeah.
I don't know, Mississippi State in there is a little sandwich.
I'm just talking SEC East.
No, I know, but I'm saying those games specific, because now you're not just talking SEC East with Georgia and losing, because the expectations are not just divisional crown. I don't know, the Starkville Sando put me on the record today. Gave Georgia a lot they could or couldn't handle a couple years ago, if you remember.
I do.
It's a close game. Okay, that's all I'm saying.